Hello, everyone. Eric Watson here. Jackass, different voice for Halloween. Freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to the Thursday, October 31st edition of my bi-weekly behind-the-scenes DM only live stream Crafting the Deep, which I build right and prepare for our next session of Call from the Deep. If you're playing characters Gottwald, Max, Savra, or Toril, this stream is not meant for you to be full of spoilers, but for the rest of you, welcome! We stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday. You can join our official Discord server with my link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. For our campaign, we use Roll20. For streaming, I use OBS Studio. I realize my webcam's a little bit tall. You can't see there's actually a little cute witch hat on top of this headdress. This is what I usually, this thing lights up, by the way, which looks really cool when walking around trick-or-treating. I've worn this like the last couple years when walking around with the kids. Very excited about tonight, obviously. Thankfully, weather's much better than it has been. It's cooled down a little bit. We had a storm roll in last night, but always better to have it storm the night before and not the night of Halloween. In fact, I don't think in all of my years we've ever actually had like a rained out Halloween. That would be the most depressing thing ever. Boy, thankfully, it's going to be a nice one today. So we are talking about Purple Rocks, which is also kind of a spooky area, I think. Although I talked about maybe not making it super spooky in terms of using all the sanity checks and scores and all that. There are some spooky events that I'm supposed to use to do the atmosphere, but they're kind of like just generic creepy things happening. And I want to stick to kind of the plot and the characters. We've talked about turning Sea King Frannis into one of the Kraken priests. So he's the out of the 5 priests, he's the last one that isn't like fully been enthralled or devoured or whatever by the Mind Flayer colony, which has supplanted the Kraken society here. But he also knows something is very wrong. So he'll be the one when the party arrives at this location. He'll be one of the first ones to greet the party and realize the party's like on death's door and that they need a long rest. And he hopes to speak with them soon, maybe cryptically tease that, but definitely invite them to sleep in a relatively safe location. Of course, it's not going to be a safe location. We're going to spring a battle upon the party, which is going to be here. We found a map for, I don't remember if I had this last time or not, or if I did this this week, actually. It's been a busy week. This is Gabriel Picard is the one I usually find Roll20 Marketplace stuff. This is from Slapdown Town Village, I think. I had to double it in size, which unfortunately the bed doesn't really fit the grid very well, but obviously we definitely wanted a battle map here for sure. Because we're going to describe this first as a nightmare situation where the party, goes down for a long rest, but I very quickly tell them don't automatically hit that long rest button. Instead, you experience this nightmare where you're like floating in the water, but then there's tentacles and it's dragging you under, and then you wake up and it turns out your nightmare is actually real. You are choking in real life. You cannot breathe. And effectively, mechanically, that will be that these slithering trackers, which are these very cool, like liquid, creepy ooze things, have crept into the party. They've essentially, once the party arrived here, they've already been alerted by the Mind Flayer colony, and once the players go down for a long rest, they send these things out to quickly kill them while they're weakened. They figure that's kind of their best shot. So it should be pretty creepy for the party. Now, the big thing I was worried about was when to ambush the party, because they are in dire need of a long rest, and I'm throwing yet another combat encounter on top of the fact a pretty challenging situation where these things will already be having attacked the party. They're basically going to start initiative having already been restrained, which actually I wonder if does that affect their initiative order? If you're restrained, that's interesting. How often do we start combat with the party restrained? I'm gonna look that up, actually. That would be insult to injury. It's like, oh, by the way, you have like disadvantage on your initiative. I mean, they're effectively being surprised, although we do use, in fact, that might be the way we do it is the initiative changes from the 2024 edition, where instead of it being a free round, it's just disadvantage on their initiative. I guess I'm kind of cheating here a little bit where I am allowing these things to get a free attack off, aren't I? But the party is also unconscious sleeping for the most part. Like, I guess if they had an elf or something, it'd be trickier. But I guess the one thing that could fuck it up is if the party thinks to have guard shifts and leave somebody awake for for an hour or two while everybody else is sleeping. Then we actually have to worry about passive perceptions and stealth checks and all that. Obviously, once the party starts getting attacked, then that would alert initiative. I would probably still give initiative to the person. So that's something I've kind of been presuming that the party just immediately all beds down and doesn't worry about it. So I'll have to come up with a contingency plan in case they actually set up for guards. Yes, Refus did have some great notes in the no players allowed section, basically mentioning the compromise of perhaps giving the players a short rest instead of a long rest if they get interrupted. His rules were he actually rolls a d8, and then wherever that falls is like what hour, because it's an 8-hour long rest, and wherever that falls is at what point during the long rest that the enemies attack. So if they and he says if they roll a 1, the party hasn't rested at all. If they roll a 2 through a 6, the party gets the benefits of a short rest. And then if they roll a 7 or 8, then the party actually already got the benefit of their long rest, which is a pretty interesting way to do it, I think. I'm tempted to just take the average and basically just give them the short rest. I certainly don't want to give them nothing because I literally don't think they would survive right now. Like, Gottwald is unconscious, and everybody else has between 9 and 25 total hit points. So I literally think I would TPK them if I didn't give them either a short rest or a long rest at this point. Restrained just means you have disadvantage on dex saving throws. Your speed is 0, and attack rolls against creature have advantage, and the creature's attack rolls have disadvantage. So it actually doesn't fuck up your initiative. But like I said, I could force everybody to make disadvantage on their initiative because they were effectively surprised here. I don't know if that'll matter because I think these creatures. Let's see, when do they actually do damage? So the grappled target is restrained and able to read. In addition, the grappled target takes 3d10 necrotic damage at the start of each of its turns. So this is an interesting point also. The way I'm reading this creature, the grappled target takes 3d10 necrotic damage at the start of each of its turns. So is that the start of the grappled target's turns or the start of the slithering tracker's turns? Grammatically, it makes it sound like that's the start of the grappled target's turns. They take necrotic damage, which makes sense. However, what do we do on the creature's turn? Because assuming they're still, they would just try to life leech constantly if they can. If they're already life leeched, I guess that's where they do their slam attack. They can just slam you around. Which would be at advantage because they've got their victim restrained, and it does an average of 8 bludgeoning damage, so that's just, I don't know, it feels odd that they just have a generic slam. They're a freaking water ooze. What are they, just like, they're forming their watery head and just like knocking at the party or something? I don't know, that's odd. Like, I like the choking necrotic damage thing. I feel like that's very thematic, the slam attack. Not so much, but I guess that's what you're supposed to do. Maybe with advantage, you just do the slam. The slam-a-jam. Roll life leech a couple times and be reminded of the damage. Wow, that's the gamut right there. 21, which is actually only slightly above average. Or 10, which is slightly below average. So I think it's about 15 damage at the start of their turns. So I think I like the compromise where the party gets attacked and assuming if they do get surprised, roll disadvantage on their initiative, which means these things would probably have a good chance of doing their advantage slam attack on them. And then also when the party starts their turn, they have to take that 3d10 necrotic damage because they've already been slammed, or they've already been enveloped with the life leech. I wonder if I want to separate this into two different things. That way, I can click on the damage without having the DC of the escape on there. That might be a good way of doing it too. Because otherwise, like, if they're already enveloped, the first time I click this on their turn, it'll have the whole thing about them grappling and all that. That feels like a little too much information to give them. So maybe we'll separate this. Maybe we'll call it Smother and then Life Leech. So call this action Smother, which is, it's essentially the same, but because the effect doesn't happen until later, then I'm going to separate these two effects. So I have two different buttons to click, basically. So that'll be Life Leech. So Life Leech isn't actually technically an action it's taking. It's just the effect that goes off when the if the person starts their turn, they've already affected by Smother, which is what I named the actual grapple and restrain action. Okay, I think that's going to make a little more sense. Okay, and then we can just click on that whenever they start their turn. That'll work better. If they do think to have somebody on watch, these things have a +8 to stealth. They're not underwater, so unfortunately they can't get the stealth action with advantage. But also their false appearance, motionless at the start of combat, has advantage on its initiative roll. I don't think it could be motionless, though, if it's already got people grappled. The creature hasn't observed the slipping tracker move or act. The creature must succeed a DC 18 investigation check. Isn't just a puddle. Yeah, that'll be interesting. I think the stealth is what's really gonna matter here, which I would honestly, what I like doing with stealth is instead of rolling the stealth, I just take the average of a 10 and add the modifier on there. So it's essentially a DC 18 perception check, or it's an 18 passive perception to try and see these watery creatures slurching through the door, and they can squeeze to a narrow space is narrow as 1 inch wide, so it's literally just like water seeping under the door, which is very cool. I don't think my party, I never have to check this, I don't think they have very good passive perception relatively. 14 for Gottwald is actually higher than I thought. 16 for Mac is higher than I thought. Okay, never mind, they've got pretty good passive perception. Savra at a 15. This is just a high level thing, and Twirls at a 13. All right, nobody's that bad. But nobody's got an 18 or higher, so certainly not a passive perception. That's if they actually put out a guard, and then if the guard thinks to be looking around, I can let them roll a perception check as well. 1 crit on a slam, high roll for damage, and someone's in serious trouble. Well, let's let them short rest, right? Like, because they actually do have hit dice to use. They haven't, even though they're really low and they've done a bunch of battles, they actually haven't short rested hardly ever. They short rested, I think, once between Driftwood Docks and Tentrix's, but then they were in that Tentrix battle the entire time, and they haven't even short rested after that. So I think they've only had 1 short rest. So Twirl still has 8 hit dice. I mean, we can look at this. Remaining, Savra's got 6 hit dice remaining. I remember she had to use a lot after Driftwood Docks. Mac has 5 hit dice remaining. And Gottwald has all 10 hit dice remaining. That's interesting. I guess he was not part of the... That's right, he wasn't here for the session where everybody short rested, was he? So I guess I could have let him short rest, but I guess maybe he didn't lose that many hit points either. Anyway, so they will actually be able to take advantage of the short rest. That also gives Twirl spells back on the short rest. And the idea here is, I mean, it's awkward to give them a short rest literally right before a long rest, but I think that's probably the best compromise to allow them to get through this, still make the fight pretty scary, hopefully, but allow them to get through the fight. Or I'm willing to accept an argument if you think that's not worth it, because they will be getting a long rest right afterwards. And if they're doing that, then you could consider like, well, then what's the point of this fight if we're just going to long rest, right after? But I think it could still be scary. You could still inflict more lingering injuries. And it's really just more for thematic scariness more than anything else. But it's an interesting argument to have, is like, how do I scare this party without literally TPKing them, and I think allowing them the short rest is the best. Unfortunately, the wizard is the one that really gets screwed because she doesn't really get anything back on a short rest. She spent all of her spell slots and all of her Wand of Wonder charges, and I believe she already used Arcane Recovery after the Driftwood Docks fight during their one other short rest that they had, so she'll be in dire straits. But it's just going to be for this one fight that everybody will be in trouble for. And I do like the idea that only these 4 are going to be attacking the party, and the NPC allies, once they get awoken to the danger element, they can immediately come up and start helping the party, most likely in trying to get these things off of them by using those strength checks versus trying to attack them. Or at least it'll be really fun the first time somebody tries to just hit the thing and they deal half the damage themselves. They're like, okay, wait, now this is an interesting puzzle to work our way through. Also, we've got our friendly Kraken Priest showing up, which is going to be kind of the twist here, that actually the first person that they meet who's actually a Kraken Priest, who might come off as a bit creepy, is actually going to be their best ally. Now watch the party completely reject him and screw themselves, and I'm sure they will. But his goal is to, check in on them because maybe he heard his fellow Kraken Priest talking and having this meeting of like, hey, there's these newcomers in town, and they're the ones that have been, disrupting our plans for so long. We've, and the Elder One demands they need to be stopped here and killed immediately and whatever. And so we need to send some assassins. So maybe the Frannis is like heard that and he's like, oh, I need to slink away and like check on them because they're my best chance to figure out what's going on here. And he happens upon them while they're being attacked, and then he will kind of bust through the door and help fight, which I'm hoping from a DM point of view is what's going to help prove this NPC's not loyalty, but just willingness to like help the party, I guess, is that he will literally help them in this combat encounter. It's going to be very tricky on my end. I think I'm probably, in fact, if I put him on the GM layer to start, then we can roll we can roll while it's in the GM layer, which hides the initiative. And then at some point when I feel like it's appropriate, where the party have lasted like a round or two, then he can bust through the door. Maybe he'll knock on it first and then, or he'll hear the sounds of combat or something. And I just have to figure that out and see how because normally he would just bust through the door like, wait, what are you doing? But maybe he hears, he's coming up on them. He hears the sounds. It's all very contrived. But he'll bust open and then help fend them off. Unfortunately, his best tactics are just to deal straight damage to them, which would be very nasty for the party. If he comes up and does like his Thunderous Touch or Thunderbolt or something, that's going to be real painful for the party. His strength check is not great for getting these things off. So hopefully that might be the other thing, is by the time he busts in the door, hopefully there's like one or two that have been disentangled from the party, and then he can come in and help just take him out with his pretty big attacks. Because once they're off of the party, these things don't have a whole lot of AC or hit points, and they should go down relatively quickly. But that's the big scary thing, is the party wakes up and they're already restrained and already taking the damage, taking those slam attacks, and they're in pretty dangerous. I have not given a different stat block to Frannis. He's just a generic Kraken Priest, which the party's already faced off a couple times with. I guess I could give him more hit points. He's already got 75 hit points as an average, so I think that's probably pretty good. Also, I'm using the token from the Crushing Wave Priest from Prince of the Apocalypse. Shout out to that. I forgot that's got some good kind of weird looking watery folks in it, so that was a really good token to use. So that's that whole sequence. And then afterwards, we'll have a scene where Frannis can actually talk to the party and say, hey, and basically all the things I was saying, which is he's really, all of his fellow Kraken Priests have been acting really weird over the last, couple weeks. And then the whole, Kraken society has gotten a lot more sinister and strange. It's always been, that's the thing, it's all relative, right? Like, to anybody else, Kraken society is already very sinister and strange. But, to him, he's like, hey, we don't do, really messed up stuff that I've been seeing lately. And it's just become very unsettling and odd. And I think something might be wrong with the Fathomless. And I want to keep using the Fathomless because that's the one that Twirl keeps talking about. And I like that the Fathomless is Slark Rathel in this campaign, at least. So I think that's the angle we're going to go with. And then he will tell the party we've got another, ritual scheduled for, tomorrow morning, maybe. And I'd like you to witness it. And perhaps if there's anything you can do in this situation, that would be good. He's probably not necessarily inviting the players for bloodshed, but more than likely the party is gonna want to turn it into a combat fight. So what I'm picturing is the scenario at the Temple of Tentacles, which is another map from Gabriel Picard. This is from the Water Temple map set, which I really like because it was a circular dome, and I just replaced the middle area with a generic looking pit map art asset, I guess. We've got dynamic lighting around it to where the party, it won't look like it's underground necessarily. We can just have it be a temple building, but obviously it's built with this unique kind of flooring where it's sunken in, and it's got water kind of throughout it. And then the Kraken priests are all going to be standing around in this kind of shallow water, but then there's this large pit. And I'm picturing like literally like a water slide type situation where there's like water going into it, but it's this long ass dark slide, real foreboding and cool. And that's where they would throw like sacrifices to Slarkratha, which would normally be, sea creatures or something. They don't really maybe sacrifice too many people necessarily, but in this case they've been doing it a lot, and that's got Frannis concerned. So he's down here, and then I did make some art of that one Purple Rocks image picture here that came with Call from the Deep. I've been kind of screen capping some of these people in here and turning that into kind of generic tokens for the people. We also got some little bit of light source in here because I figured these guys don't have dark vision, so they would need something. And then the latest thing I was doing was I want one of the Kraken priests to be a Mind Flayer in disguise, which is part of the story. And so to do that properly, I was actually making a multi-sided token, which been a while since I had to do that, but the way to do it, I guess I could have done this on the stream, but you have to do a rollable table, and then you have to add items, and it doesn't matter what they say, but you have to add them, the pictures. Oops, I should delete that one. The pictures should be the token, so you can just drag the pictures on there. And unfortunately, you can't just drag them from your journal. You have to drag them either from the art gallery or from your own PC, basically. So the easiest way I have to do it quickly is just to blow up the tokens using Z, save the image on my computer, and then drag the image back onto if you can find them in the art gallery, then you can use them from Roll20. But that's the easiest. It's a stupid workaround, but that's the quickest way to do that one. And then that creates whatever tokens on there is what makes the rollable token. So if we save changes and then we click on token, that spawns the token on the map, which is not tied to anything currently, but it's got the multi-sided part of it. And the reason I want to do this is that way, that's the best way to create a token that transforms, and you don't want to lose the initiative, because initiative is always tied to the specific token, which, we struggled with in the Tentrix floating layer map quite a bit, right? So this way, I can have this, all three of these look like, Kraken Priest, but then one of them is actually going to be a Mind Flayer. And then Deep Lord Ingramar, which is ironically not actually going to be the top one, right? He's just been, actually I don't know I guess I have to read about what's his deal. So this one, instead of being, so the token will look like a Kraken Priest, but he's actually going to be, I think Druskus is the name. Let's see if I think those are separate stat blocks. Yeah, Druskus. He will actually be a Mind Flayer in disguise, which will make this fight was already a pretty challenging fight. And now it's going to be a little more challenging, I think. So, and if he's going to be a named enemy, which the players have technically met this Mind Flayer before in the Bronzo Mines, where I was really, this Mind Flayer is first there. He's the only one of the Mind Flayer bosses who's out and about. But it was at a level where I was really worried about the party facing off against a Mind Flayer. So instead I had him appear and then just kind of send a bunch of enemies to the party and then disappear. Very classic, like, higher villain move. They don't necessarily have the players fight that villain, but you want to introduce that villain still. So he's got the Mind Flayer stat block plus maybe a few extra things here and there. So he's actually a little bit stronger, I think, than the average Mind Flayer. Which we can also give him additional hit points, but I don't want to make him stronger than the Deep Lord, maybe? The Deep Lord is a... I don't know, there might be a better stat block to use here, actually. He's a Warlock of the Great Old One, I believe. Which is only a CR6. But he's also carrying the Staff of the Magi, which is crazy. I'll have to look that one up, but I think, doesn't that give him a whole bunch of new powers and things? I'm leery about making this too many of these stat blocks really strong, because there are I mean, we're going to have... It's a lot of spellcasters, but the party has one ally who's equal to some of these spellcasting creatures, which is Frannis. Although, I don't know, he may not be necessarily on board with killing everybody too. He may just want to like knock them unconscious and try to like free them. But he just doesn't quite know. I guess when one of them turns into a Mind Flayer, then he'll be like, oh fuck. I guess they're pretty far gone. I don't think there's anybody... I could put some Deep Scions in here. Would probably be the best use for a minion, but I don't... Is that adding too... The party would be level 11. So also by the time they long rest, after the Slithering Tracker fight, they will also level up to 11 and be fully long rested. So... But that may be their long rest of the campaign. I don't know. It depends on how much they do in Ascarl. I'll have to explore that whole area and see if they're in need of another long rest. It is a very, very large dungeon crawl area, but only if it makes sense if they can long rest somewhere. But that'll be a fun twist. It's just one of these like random guys, I think, that's supposed to be the Mind Flayer, not actually the big boss. Maybe the big boss is something else. Let's see if it says something. Some purple rocks. Though each Deep Lord is equal, Deep Lord Ingramar is the voice of the council and acts as the mouthpiece for Slarkerthel the Kraken. Each Elder's connection with the Kraken means that Slarkerthel, or now Zelix 4, can kill them telepathically by using an action to deal psychic damage to them. So I could also do something creepy where maybe Deep Lord Ingramar like stands still, and if the party especially tries to disguise their way in or just kind of shuttle their way, because the thing is, they won't be like hostile immediately when they come in here necessarily. The entire like village is probably used to having Kraken Society people come and, you know, either visit for a little while, like a pilgrimage, or maybe even, you know, set up shop here or whatever. So it wouldn't be necessarily out of the ordinary, although lately it probably would be, because a lot of them have maybe been taken over or enslaved or something by the Mind Flayer colony. So that would be the only extra creepy factor to it. But certainly a lot of these bosses who have also been taken over by Slarkerthel would be probably pretty hostile to the party. All the elders know something is wrong with Slarkerthel, though they don't know what. Their efforts to placate the Krakens or throwing children in the sea have failed to produce their efforts. Interesting. So in the story, it actually says, effort to appease Slarkerthel. They've been taking more drastic measures, such as sacrificing humanoids who visit the islands. There's a lack of action by Slarkerthel's strange creatures have been visiting the islands who seem linked to the Kraken. These visitors are the Mind Flayer attendants of Zelix 4 who devour the brains of Rocklanders for subsistence and take others below the waves for seramorphosis. Okay, so the way it's written in the book is that even the Elder... I guess the way it's written in the book is that the colony isn't as powerful because they're still like hiding and they haven't fully taken over this area yet. So maybe it would make more sense if Deep Lord Ingramar is actually the Mind Flayer. Because then they would, and maybe he's the one that's been kind of leading them, and or they, I guess it says non-binary. They've the one that there's the one that's been if they're the mouthpiece of the Kraken, then it makes sense that they would be like the first to be absorbed or taken over. So actually I may change this, and that may be the twist, is that turns out Can Mind Flayers do that? Like the deep side, can they like pop out into Mind Flayer form? Maybe I just needed that to happen. Have like Disguise Self or something? Because it says like in the book, like they're wearing a robe or something. You can't see. It's like, okay, but like I don't really like the tokens don't really reflect that, and I think it'd be cooler if it was like magically like the Deep Scions can literally just like morph into normal form or not. I get that Mind Flayer is a different thing. I may just use some DM magic to make it happen. Maybe it's just some sort of fancy illusion spell that the Mind Flayer keeps up. Ooh, Legendary Resistance. Damn, did I modify the stat block at some point? Maybe I did. But I already have all these things. Wait a minute, is Driscus... Driscus might be the one that they already fought against, now that I think about it. They already fought this one, didn't they? Shoot. I think now that I'm looking at it, I think Driscus is the one they fought in the styes. Crap. Well, we can look at that. We can look at the token. Is the token still there? Let's look at the style. I think I'm using the wrong one. Temple. Yeah, that's definitely that stat block. Okay, so shoot, they already fought that one. That's why I was looking at the stat block on, wait a minute, they already did this one. Okay. So I need to use one of the other members of the... What was it? Thiliask then? Shoot. Where does it talk about Colony of Zelix 4? Triscus, Lugrizal, Luz Grigal, I don't know if I can say that. Despises humanoids. Maybe the tech one, I think. Okay. And then there's Tharceli, which is the sword master one. Okay. Thiliask is the biological mastermind. So Thiliask must have been the one that I was talking about that I meant to say. Okay. So, in fact, we can go back to the mine and see if that token's still there. I confused my Mind Flayers. I mean, technically, I guess we could use the same token. It's whatever, but I should get my Mind Flayers right. I was in Gunderlin, Bronzo Mine. Well, I might have deleted the token. Yeah, it's that one. Thiliask. Okay. But the stat blocks are different, so I need to make sure those are... Alright, so Thiliask is the one I meant to say, not Driscus. Driscus is the one they already fought and killed in the styes. Thiliask is a different one, and actually is stronger than Driscus. Gas canister. I'm probably going to ignore that part of it. They basically, Perry went and kind of modified all the stat blocks to make them theme towards a certain thing they're doing, but then I've been using them in different ways, so sometimes that doesn't really work out. But yeah, this is the stat block I meant to use, so maybe I need to change my whole damn thing. Let's go back to Purple Rocks, Temple. So I need to change... let's see. We want to bring Thiliask out here. Named NPCs, which we're at. Thiliask is right there. Let's put you on the token layer. Let's blow you up. Let's save your image. And then let's go, we can delete you. Kraken Flare, we're gonna just remove this one. Although I do love that art. And we're gonna drag this one over here. Now you do get to see this happening. Maybe you can give them the Ultra Intrication that gives Disguise Self. I mean, they have control of the Kraken. They do, yeah. Yeah, so maybe it'll be the effect of Disguise Self. That's probably the easiest thing to do. All right, so save changes. Oh wait, no, I actually want to change it again because I want to make this one the Mind Flayer. So we're going to change that part of it also. So we're going to save this one. Totally changing my plans here. All right, so we're gonna. I guess we can keep that as a Kraken Priest if we care. Just make it a 3-sided one. So add another one, and then drag you here, which is gonna fix our stat block problem. So they're not actually a Warlock of the Great Old One. They are in fact just a Mind Flayer. So that also fixes my misgivings about using this stat block. So now we click token. We go to multi-sided. We choose that side right there. We delete this. However, it's still a Mind Flayer wielding the Staff of the Magi, right? I do want to keep that part of it. I need to look up that item and see what the fuck that does to the stat block. Oh, wait, and okay, so you are Thiliosk. Okay, now you're tied to the NPC AC. Hit points. We'll probably just give you 100. Maybe you need more. I don't know. Okay, so we've fixed that. Which means you are no longer a Mind Flayer. You are just a Kraken Priest. That means there's a lot of Kraken Priests, though. Okay. Put you back to your normal. I'm going to put you on AC, which is that. All right. So I was going to look up the Staff of the Magi and see what that does. Be prepared for me to go, oh my god. Staff of the Magi, legendary. Wielders of Magic Quarterstaff grants a +2 bonus to attacks and damage rolls, +2 bonus to spell attack rolls. Staff has 50 charges. Regains 46 +2 daily. Spell absorption. You have advantage on saving throws against spells. That's fucking huge. In addition, you can use your reaction when another creature casts a spell that targets only you. If you do, the staff absorbs the magic of the spell. I should definitely point out the fact that they're holding like a really fancy, cool staff, and then point out that like it's like the video game thing where like your journal has been updated, or it's like the mark about, hey, somebody took my Staff of the Magi and I can't find it. Oh my god. Well, usually holding the staff, you can use an action to expend expensive its charges to cast one of the following spells from it: Conjure Elemental, Dispel Magic, Fireball, 7th level using 7 charges, Flaming Sphere, Ice Storm, Invisibility, Knock, Lightning Bolt, Pass Wall, Plane Shift, Telekinesis, Wall of Fire, or Web. Wow. That's amazing. You can also use an action to cast one of the following spells without using any charges, so just free spells: Arcane Lock, Detect Magic, Enlarge, Reduce, Light, Mage Hand, or Protection from Evil and Good. This is bananas. You can use an action to break the staff over your knee against a solid surface, forming a retributive strike. The staff is destroyed and releases its remaining magic in an explosion. You have a 50% chance to instantly travel to a random plane of existence. That's a big deal fucking roll right there. If you fail to avoid the explosion, you take force damage equal to 16 times the number of charges in the staff. That's a very specific number. Wow, that's hilarious. That is hilarious. So I have to give my Mind Flayer potentially all of these spells. My god. Honestly, the spell absorption alone is really crazy. So that means they would gain... Alright, let's open up your stat block. They would gain magic resistance. Right? Advantage on spells. Which already has magic resistance. Alright. But you can use your reaction when another creature casts a spell that targets only you. If you do, the staff absorbs the magic of the spell, canceling its effect and gaining a number of charges equal to absorbed spell's level. However, you do so, if doing so brings the staff's total number of charges above 50, the staff explodes if you activate its retributive strike. Oh, damn. So, would it be full of charges? Probably. Number of charges equal to absorbed spell's level. Okay. So I wouldn't really be able to use that effect. Oh, I can't put my glasses back on. I wouldn't be able to use that absorption effect until I start actually casting spells. I wonder if I should use the 2024 edition of Conjure Elemental versus... Just because all the Conjure spells don't actually summon anything. They do like an effect. Yeah, excuse me. I've still got like allergy issues. Choose the spirit elements. When a creature you see enters the spirit space starts its turn within 5 feet, you force a creature to make a dex saving throw. Spirit is no creature restrained. Takes 8d8 damage and restrains them. A large intangible spirit in an unoccupied space. So basically just create this AoE zone. Yeah, I kind of like those because it doesn't summon a new creature. Instead, it does like a nasty effect. I don't know if you can actually move it though. Start of each turn, a strained creature. Target repeats save and a failed save. Target takes 48 of the damage. Spirit's type, and it's the target isn't restrained by the spirit. Yeah, you don't actually get to move it. So you really just, I mean, it's basically just an AoE spell. But it's whenever a creature you see enters the spirit space or starts its turn within 5 feet of the spirit. Which is annoying. It's one of those that you start your turn there. I thought they had changed a lot of those, but I guess some of them still exist. Unfortunately, a lot of these spells are big AoE spells that would not be great for this situation. God, it also has access to plane shift, though. I mean, I kind of do want to give it to the players. This powerful ABC target this offer. The 2020 version is broken as fuck. Really? I mean, other than summoning an elemental, which is pretty big. Enters a spirit space, it starts to turn within 5 feet. You can force a target to make a dex save at the target. On a failed save, the target takes 8d8 damage, which is huge amount of damage for a 5th level spell. That's pretty solid. I mean, what is Cone of Cold? Is that about the same? Cone of Cold is also 8d8. Okay. But they are also restrained, which is huge. At the start of each of its turns, the restrained target repeats the save. At the start, and on a failed save, the target takes 48. So I guess the one balancing factor is you don't keep taking the 8d8, but you do. I mean, 48 is still pretty solid, too. And it could lock you down and keep restraining you. Yeah, it's pretty nasty. Telekinesis is pretty awesome and very flavorful for a Mind Flayer. Cast the spell, and as your action each round for the duration, you can exert your will on one creature object you can see within range, causing appropriate effect below. Although you're just moving them. It would be really nasty is I could force the party very quickly to make it down to the ruins of Escarl if I end up dropping somebody down to the pit. In fact, I really need to start looking at that because there's a good chance somebody will end up in the pit, one of the party members, because there's a pit there. Ability check to move 30 feet in any direction, including upward. That's pretty much the only option. Okay. Doesn't actually do any damage, though, for a 5th level spell. I think Big B's kind of a better version of having telekinesis, and Big B's has more options to it. I don't know. What would be the best option? I guess casting lightning bolts at people. The Mind Flayer wouldn't necessarily care about human casualties. I mean, if... That's an interesting thing to think about. Because they are trying to just take over Utherall. Where's the event with the Mind Flayer? I keep having to read the same things like 8 different times as I work my way around this storyline. Figure cloaked in a head-to-toe black veil. Mind Flayer created by Seraphim Forces. Watches over the process. As he talks, the Mind Flayer from the previous room enters, causing Francis to break out in a cold sweat. Carries DC 10 insight checks. The Desperation Madness of the Blue-Eyed Stare. The Longhouse. Those who displease the deep gods must take the traitor's plunge. That's definitely something I will use. But then, yeah, the Desperate Flight. Group consists of 3 Mind Flayer Thrall Berserkers and 2 Deep Scions led by the Mind Flayer from Vilkstead Castle. The Rocklanders trying to seize Frannis. When he resists, the Deep Scions transform. Group takes Frannis to the beach and out to the shallows. Rocklanders surround the Sea King for the Mind Flayer. Another Rocklander uses a knife to slit his throat and holds his head beneath the breaking waves. The other thing I could do, here's an interesting thought, is instead of it being a uh, random commoner that they're throwing in there, maybe they point their finger at Frannis and say, you're a traitor. Um, you've conspired with enemies of the. In fact, maybe when the party walks in, they see this happening as like a cutscene. They see them like huck somebody who screams as they go down the chute. That way, there's no real way to stop it or something. It really is like a cutscene. But then maybe the next scene is like, as when they're entering, but before they've been able to start some shit. Ingramar then says, "Hey, you are a traitor who conspire with enemies of the Fathomless, and you must take the traitor's plunge." And then like two of the Kraken priests like grab him and start hauling him over to the hole. Maybe that might be the better way of doing it, because then that would motivate obviously the party to get involved pretty quickly, and would give Frannis the last little bit of motivation to be like, oh shit, like I'm like what, and he'll be like, no, please, I've always been loyal to the Fathomless and all this. And then maybe the response is like, well, we'll see how well your loyalty does when you beg forgiveness from the Fathomless and just make it all a cool, like, just evil religious thing going on here. So that might actually be the cooler way of doing it. I may write that as the cutscene that's happening, is like they've realized that Frannis helped the party, and thus they're going to take him out. The one thing I'm doing is I'm kind of skipping and allowing the party to just make their way into the temple. I don't have like guards or anything. Like I'm just not interested in necessarily turning this into a big dungeon crawl situation when we've got a dungeon crawl coming up in the future. So I think I'm just gonna let the party waltz in here. And yeah, maybe I guess the big question is, should I have other creatures in this fight, or do you think this is enough to be a challenging fight for the party? In other words, I could throw some like Deep Scion people in here to actually do the guard stuff versus so right now I've replaced the boss of the priest, basically the highest of the high priests, Deep Lord Ingramar, with the stat block of a Mind Flayer. So they've got a Mind Flayer boss, which is already going to be a boss fight, which is funny. It's their first big fight after their long rest. And then there's also 3 Kraken priests here, which are was it CR5, I think? Yeah. So 3 of those. And then you've got Frannis, who's also a Kraken priest, but he could be persuaded to help defend the others. So that actually swings the challenge quite a bit in the party's favor, I think. Also, it's an interesting battle map where the spellcasters, which all of these are, wouldn't really be able to take huge advantage of their... I guess, well, on the one hand, they could do a lot of damage with AoEs, but they would also be damaging like themselves or their own people. So I don't know how effective a lot of their spells would be, even though Ingramar does have the Staff of the Magi. But like, I don't know if it's worth conjuring an Ice Storm or throwing a Fireball in here. Certainly lobbing a Lightning Bolt down the line. And a lot of these Rocklanders would probably try to like escape or something once like real nasty combat broke out, I would assume. Unfortunately, the book doesn't really go into detail on like what happens if the party starts just fighting everybody. Like, I don't know if there's any... There's one thing, yeah, if they leave Utherall and try to go to Tristan, they get attacked. But in terms of them, like, starting shit in any of these areas, I'm not sure it mentions any follow-ups from that. Also uses Berserkers and Tribal Warriors. These are stat blocks that I don't have any interest in using, I think, at this point. The Deep Scion is probably the best one as a minion, although as a minion, it's actually a little bit stronger, but 67 average hit points is pretty nasty, so you probably don't want to use too many of those, but this would be an appropriate place to use Deep Scions also. It's kind of the like quintessential awesome Kraken Society type creature. So I don't know, what do we think in terms of a level 11 party? It's gonna be freshly long rested. Do we need to throw some Deep Scions in there, I guess, is the is the big question, or do we think we've got enough stuff here? And this is a kind of boss level Mind Flayer that we've got as well. I have not messed with. In fact, what I'll probably do is copy Druskis's stuff, because I think that worked out pretty well in terms of the reactions and things he could do. I don't necessarily need to make each of these Krakens. I appreciate that Perry did make like four different unique Mind Flayer stat blocks, but they were thematically tied to like specific things they were doing, and now I basically changed Thiliask from one thing to another. So like him having access to like gas canisters and stuff, I don't think is super thematic anymore. Whereas Druskis just had like generically cool Mind Flayer powers, I think. He actually had layer actions, that's right. Psychic Influence, force a DC 16 Wiz save, must use their action to make a melee range attack against a creature other than itself. Druskis can mentally choose. Psychic Wave, every creature with 120 feet must make a DC 16 Intelligence save or take 3d8 psychic damage. And Telepathic Reinforcement, another creature gains advantage on attack rolls. And you can also command allies as a bonus action to make a melee weapon attack using its reaction, and has advantage on the attack and a psychic deflection. Creature becomes the new target of the attack. So honestly, if I just give Thiliask like all of these powers, that would probably be enough. And then give him some legendary resistance for sure. Or I don't give him any of that and just say maybe he's the big spellcaster of the group, which actually he's got fewer spells than other Mind Flayers, I think. What does the average Mind Flayer have? No harm using lower health. That's true. Yeah, I could use Deep Silence just to lower the health, because their health is kind of nuts. That's a good point. The Dolgaunt. Be a good minion at this level, though. It's Eberron. I don't mind using... I mean, you can use any creature just for the sake of it. Let's see. Actually, no. That's what... So I guess the other guy just had more spells. So Mind Flayers only have Dominate Monster, Plane Shift, Detect Thoughts, and Levitate as their basic spells they have access to. So for Thiliask stat block... Yeah, first of all, let's get rid of the gas canister. I'm not going to use that. Already got magic resistance. I mean, it honestly, just having the Staff of the Magi is going to be crazy. Spell absorption, which I do kind of want to keep. I need to keep the Staff of the Magi. Like, I can't use DM magic to like, oh, you can always use a reaction to absorb spells. Like, if I'm going to give this to the players, they're going to see this in action. And I don't mind it. Like, at this point, we're very late in the game. You know, we're in the last final dungeon coming up. Like, I don't mind giving her a really, really sexy, cool, fancy magic staff. And I teased it from the very early, not the early game, but like the early to mid game, I guess. The fact that this staff was out there and was stolen from somebody whom they had met. I just don't know which spells I would use if I do the 2024 edition of Conjure Elemental. Because I don't know if I just want to literally summon. I guess I'd summon like a water elemental here. If I use the original version, then yeah, just summoning a water elemental, which again, if concentration is broken, that thing is still up and rampaging. I think that would make things pretty challenging because it's a creature. But the effect, yeah, now that I'm looking at it, the fact that you can throw that in the middle of a party and it has the potential to like do a ton of damage, probably around 30 damage average, and also force everybody to save against being restrained. Interesting. Do you not take any damage if you make the save? When a creature you see enters the spirit space from the 5 feet, you force a creature to make a dex saving throw. The spirit has no creature. If the spirit has no creature restrained. So I guess it can only restrain once it's restraining even anybody, then it can no longer do more. So it's not necessarily an ongoing effect if it's already got somebody locked down. That's interesting. But technically, we're not using any 2024 spells except for counter spells. So it would just be I could just have them conjure a water elemental. And the same thing, if I give it to the players, they're going to expect, oh, well, I can conjure a freaking elemental. Dispel Magic will be very useful if somebody throws up a big spell. Obviously, we can use that. Lightning Bolt I've used a lot. Is very thematic to water creatures, I feel like. 8d6 lightning damage in a 5-foot wide line. So I guess I just need to add a whole bunch of spells to a stat block. Instead of Deep Scions, they're Meek Scions. Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. I could even call them like weak Scion is pretty funny. Meek Scion. Where's my Deep Scion? I think I had to add new ones that had proper tokens. Where are you, buddies? Search for Deep. There it is, Deep Scion. There you are. And you already have? You don't. Well, we can have them hidden on the layer. We don't need to necessarily make them a multi-token. So if we gave them just half the hit points, which would be, say, 33. Fortunately, I can't roll average for that, but if we just give all of them 33 hit points, that's probably fine. So maybe we'll put, maybe just like 2 of them would probably be scary enough. Yeah, what's y'all's AC? I think their AC is not good, is it? Yeah, 12. Not good. They do have that Psychic Screech, though, which is pretty terrifying. A chance to stun people. And I think the way that I always flavored that is, like, when they transform, they do their Psychic Screech. Like, that's the effect. Because otherwise it takes a full action. Or no, it's a bonus action. Did I change that to a bonus action, or is it always a bonus action? That's, I'm not sure. I might need to keep that in action, actually. It's pretty... Being able to be stunned, even for only a turn, is pretty nasty. Alright, so we'll put those... The Weakened Scion. Maybe, let's call it a Lesser Deep Scion. We'll make it so that, like, some of these guys transform. But I like the idea that they actually grab Frannis and get ready to sacrifice him. So the party needs to act quickly in order to try to save his ass and motivate them. I like it. I like it. So we'll need to figure out where this actual pit goes, which is going to be probably somewhere in the actual ruins of Ascarl versus the dungeons. Because I assume it will drop them, you know, somewhere near the main Kraken's feeding grounds. And that would be one entrance to get to the main dungeon area. But I will also lay the seeds of the fact that he'll basically, I think he'll tell them about the temple. There's a ritual coming up. And that would be expected to go to first. And then I'll also mention there's this crumbling tower north of the village that I've seen a lot of my fellow Kraken priests come in and out of, and also bring people through. And he hasn't had the nerve to go like explore that area yet. So that'll be the teases for those 2 areas, which will be the Northern Trisk map, which we'll have to work on that one a little bit in case the party makes it to there as well. I've got some fucking work to do today tomorrow. Damn. It's a lot going to a new area, isn't it? Especially these areas that are kind of open-ended and aren't just a straightforward dungeon crawl. So yeah, we gotta put that together. All right, I think that is going to do it for this spooky Crafting the Deep. Happy Halloween, everybody. If you enjoy the content, please check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shouts to Platinum patrons: Joe, Will, Thomas, Dan, Brennan, Zenocide, Eclectic, Role Player, Christopher, Corey, Big Nut, John F., John L., Nathan, Kirkwisten, Counselor, Andrew, The Reldron, Stemphy, Patrick, Jason, Isabel, Amit, Lumpy Spud, Sharni, Warden, Herder, Unimoni, LLC, Tom, AJ, They're Eating the Dogs, Caleb, Chad, Luke, and Nicholas. And gold patrons: RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Lizard Lounge, Jerome, Nathan, Fazlica, Torres, Scott, Ruffus, Jerry, Glenn, Marcus, and Mark. Thank you all very much for your support.